Good morning and welcome to the Planning Hearing Officers hearing for March 6, 2019. My name is Laura Stotler and I'm serving as the hearing officer today. We have 4 cases and the relevant exhibits are posted on the panels located directly behind me. The staff reports, agenda, recommendations for each of today's cases, all of those can be found on the table by the front door and also at on the city's website. You can also find a copy of the hearing procedures by the counter by the door as well. Let me see, today's exhibits with the 4 cases we have, one is a parking reduction permit, we have a setback variance case, and we have a standards variance and a conditional use permit. For conditional use permits under the provisions of Title 30, Chapter 30.42 of the Glendale Municipal Code, a conditional use permit shall be granted if 4 required findings are present. For applications involving the sale, serving, or consumption of alcoholic beverage, there's also an additional 5 criteria that shall be considered when making the 4 required findings. For variances under the provisions of Title 30, Chapter 30.43 of the Glendale Municipal Code, a variance shall be granted if 4 required findings are present. For parking reduction permits, applications for parking reduction permits shall meet the procedures and criteria set forth in Section 30.32.070A and Table 30.32-B with qualifying project features. For all of these staff reports, their findings are included as part of those staff reports if you have any questions about it. If the evidence presented in the application and at the hearing meets the criteria, then the planning officer can either approve or oppose conditions for approval on the case in question. If the findings of fact are not evident, then the request will be denied. Notification of the hearings were accomplished by use of public notices which were mailed to property owners and occupants located within 500 feet of the subject property. Notice was physically posted on the site in question, and a notice was also placed in the local newspaper, and you can also find all notices posted on the city's website. So hearings will proceed as follows. First, I'll read a description of the required entitlements. Then the case planner will make a brief overview of the case, give an analysis, and make a recommendation. The applicant will then be asked to come forward stating both name and address and will be asked to present a case within a 15-minute time limit. Others in support of or in opposition to the application and any interested parties will then be asked to come forward to speak, stating both name and address, and you will have a 3-minute time limit for that. Lastly, the applicant will be given the opportunity to make any closing comments if desired in response to testimonies previously given, and the rebuttal will be 5 minutes. The hearing will be closed and a case taken under submission. After the hearing, the decision will be prepared in writing and will be in the form of a letter sent to the applicant and to all persons who responded to the public notice, either by speaking at today's hearing or if you've submitted written responses. The date of the decision will be the date appearing on the letter. However, if a decision is made at this hearing, the decision date will be today's date, and the 15-day appeal period, and these will be calendar days, would start today. Under the appeals provision of Title 30, Chapter 30.62 of the Glendale Municipal Code, the decision may be appealed to the Planning Commission within 15 days of the date of the decision. Again, that's the date on the letter. Anyone wishing to appeal may obtain forms and brochures on the procedures from the Permit Services Center located in room 101 of this building. So if you do wish to speak, we have speakers, the green speakers forms, which are on the counter by the table or by the front door. If you want to submit one of those, we'll call you up to speak when your item is called. I'd also like to inform everyone that the official proceedings of this hearing are being recorded and are part of the public record. So we are going to take cases out of order today. The first case I will be taking will be 404 South Louise Street. That's a setback variance case number PVAR 1830391. The applicant is Rodney Kahn and the staff person is Vista Izadi. So I'd like to ask for an overview presentation of the case.
Good morning, Ms. Stotler, and thank you. The applicant is requesting approval of a setback variance to allow the construction of a new fence within the street front and street side setback areas of an existing private school located at 404 South Louise Street in the R1650 multifamily zone. The new fence will range in height from 8 to 11 feet and will replace an existing chain link fence on the property. The project site's an approximately 50,000 square foot site with frontage on 3 streets: South Louise Street to the west, East Elk Avenue to the north, and East Lomita Avenue to the south. The site was originally developed in 1924 with a private school, Holy Family Elementary. There are 2 buildings located on the site along with associated playground and outdoor areas for students and staff. The original grade school building is located along the western portion of the site facing South Louise. This building is listed on the California Register of Historical Resources, and no changes to the building are proposed. Along the northern portion of the site, along East Elk, is the 2-story grade school building that was added to the site or to the campus in 1963. The surrounding neighborhood features single-family and multifamily residential uses. Directly to the south of the site is Holy Family High School, and then Holy Family Church is located directly to the west. The applicant is proposing to construct a new fence with a minimum 16-foot 2 setback along South Louise Street, where the zoning code requires a minimum of 20 feet, and a new fence with a 0 setback from the street side property lines along East Elk and East Lomita Avenues, where the code would require a minimum 5-foot setback. The proposal will replace an existing chain link fence that encompasses most of the campus, and it'll replace it with a new decorative wrought iron fence. And this is to allow the use of the campus and the associated playground areas by both students and staff in a safe and secure environment. Currently, along South Louise, the existing chain link fence has a 0 setback, and the request would provide the new 16-foot 2 setback. In addition to providing safety and security, the new fence will maintain the usable outdoor play areas for students that are currently existing. There are exceptional circumstances and conditions that apply to the subject property that wouldn't generally apply to other properties in the same zone or neighborhood. Firstly, the project site is larger in comparison to most residential properties in the neighborhood and has frontage on 3 streets. Secondly, the site has been in operation as a private school in a residential zone since 1924 and has development and operational needs that would differ from a standard residential use. In this case, the location of the new fence in the setback areas will maintain the existing usable outdoor areas while providing safety and security for staff and the students. Lastly, the request involves replacing an existing chain link fence with a new decorative fence at roughly the same height and location as what's there currently. And the setback areas have already been established by that existing chain link fence. To require the applicant to comply with the zoning code setback requirements would require impractical changes to the existing site that would unduly restrict the use as a private school. Denial of the requested variance would result in a loss of outdoor space currently used by students, including the kindergarten play area that's located along East Lomita Avenue, and there's an outdoor seating area along East Elk Avenue. Outdoor yard areas, including playgrounds and seating, are common ancillary uses for a school, public or private. Granting of the variance will not be materially detrimental to the public welfare or injurious to the property or improvements in such zone or neighborhood in which the property is located. The new fence will be required to meet all building code requirements and will be required to obtain approval of a design review exemption to ensure that the new fence is architecturally compatible with the existing buildings on site. Also along Louise, the new fence is going to be pulled back from the property line to be in line with the buildings, which would allow for better visibility for vehicular traffic along East Elk and East Lomita Avenue. Those are both stop sign intersections. The granting of the variance will be in keeping with the character of the existing private school and not contrary to objectives of the ordinance. The intent of prohibiting most development within street setback areas is to maintain the open streetscape of residential neighborhoods. For this current situation, the openness of the streetscape will be maintained and remain unchanged, as the proposal will replace an existing fence with a new wrought iron design, which also allows for transparency through the fence. Staff believes that all the findings for the variance can be made in a positive manner and recommends the request be granted with conditions. That concludes my presentation. I'm available for any questions. Thank you.
Okay, thanks. I don't have any questions right now with that. May I please call up this, we have one applicant, Rodney Kahn.
Good morning. Good morning, Ms. Stotler and city staff. My name is Rodney Kahn. My offices are located on North Brand Boulevard in the city of Glendale. I am here today on behalf of the Holy Family Catholic community, and I'm actually part of a project team. With me today, I have Deacon Ron Baker from Holy Family. I have Karen Compton, who's our project manager. I have Ann Wong, our architects from Pika Sullivan. And we have our landscape architect, Wayne Romanak. This is part of a master plan project. This is the first stage of this, which is to take this existing chain link fence and, as Vista pointed out, to replace the chain link fence with a new decorative safety and security fence for the grade school campus. This new fencing will upgrade our facility. It will also provide and maintain a safe and secure environment for the children. Excuse me. The main building is a historical resource. And one of the things we wanted to do with this new fencing was to complement this historical resource and be consistent with it. So removal of a chain link fence and the introduction of this decorative wrought iron with the plaster and the caps will fit in nicely with this existing building. As mentioned also, the height of the proposed fencing is very similar to the height that currently exists with the chain link fence. The property is located in the R1650 medium high density residential zone. And the Glendale Municipal Code has certain setback requirements, 20 feet minimum, 23-foot average for the first residential floor. It also talks about street side and interior setbacks for the first residential floor. Obviously, these setbacks were designed for a residential building. We have a grade school for children that exists on the site. I'd like to briefly touch upon the required findings that need to be made in order to approve the request. Before I do, we agree with city staff that all of the findings could be made for the approval. The strict application of the provisions of the ordinance, it would result in practical difficulties. This hardship finding, we're actually replacing the fencing, this existing outdated chain link fencing that's existed for decades on this site. And the improvements that are taking place are with the fencing, which is why we're here today, but in the areas specifically along South Louise Street, where we're pulling back the fencing to align with the existing building. In those paved areas, we'll now be introducing new landscaping. And if you look at the overall site plan, you're seeing landscaping that's going to be introduced throughout that campus, which currently landscaping is very sparse other than on South Louise Street. To relocate the fence wall would be completely out of character with this existing campus, and in fact, it would hurt us in terms of the children's outdoor play area. On this campus, we have TK, K, all the way through the 8th grade. So as much outdoor play area that we can maintain for these small children is that much the better. There are exceptional circumstances. It was already mentioned. We have a very large site, 50,000 plus square feet when compared to other sites or parcels in the area. Also, the dynamics of a private school, a private Catholic school. When you compare that to other property in the same zone and neighborhood that is not part of the Holy Family campus. In terms of being materially detrimental to the public welfare, this chain link fence that surrounds our campus has existed for decades. And what we're looking at doing is improving it, and upgrading the campus as well. That's very beneficial to the community and to the public areas. In terms of the objectives of the ordinance, the Holy Family Catholic Grade School has a very long history, we learned, at this location of providing academic excellence to the residents of Glendale and the surrounding community. By us upgrading this academic campus, it's very much encouraged in Glendale's education section, as called out in the community facilities element of the general plan. This element describes the vital importance that private academic schools, along with the public academic schools, play in relationship to the city's health, the safety, and the general welfare. Granting this variance request promotes the greater good of encouraging the presence of education and academic schools for the many benefits they provide. We've had an opportunity to review the staff report along with the 6 conditions of approval. We've reviewed those and we agree to comply with all of them. I'll conclude my presentation and be happy to answer any questions you may have. Thank you.
I guess I do have a question in terms of, I understand it's consistent with the community facilities element, but I also noted that it is consistent with, we have a draft South Glendale community plan. And for this area, I realized that, yeah, there's absolutely a plan to upgrade the school. So I just want to note that I know that plan's been adopted or at least recommended for adoption. It got held up in a lawsuit, but that's still an active project. So I did want to point that out as well. The question I have is there a need for security? I'm thinking in terms of perhaps fire access to have a way to get through your fencing into the blacktop area where the school is. I just didn't see anything on this plan that shows a wide enough opening to get an emergency vehicle. I wasn't sure if that was required or not. So I don't know if it's on here and I just missed it.
Ms. Stotler, if you look at East Alameda Avenue, on the southeast corner, there's a curb cut.
Okay.
If you look at that area directly north of that is a gate that opens.
Okay.
To the west, there's a pedestrian gate. I can come forward if that's allowed.
Yeah, would you show me where that's at?
This is the existing curb cut, so vehicles can enter onto the campus if needed. And this is the sliding gate that operates here.
All right, thanks. Okay, that's the only question I had. Is there anybody else? I don't have any other cards. Is there anybody else who wishes to speak on this item? I don't see anybody. I did hear all the findings that are required. Therefore, I am going to approve this project today as presented in the staff report.
Thank you very much.
Thanks. So that concludes the first item we're hearing today, 404 South Louise Street. The next item I have is 3600 Marengo Drive. This is a request for a notice of intent to adopt a negative declaration, a standards variance case number PVAR 1821586, and conditional use permit case number PCUP 1821585. And I just want to verify with the case planner that all the applicants, thank you, are here.
Yes, I do see the applicant out in the audience.
Okay.
I'll approach the board and give a brief presentation.
All right, thank you.
Thank you very much.
Once again, the applicants for the application's request is for a variance of a CUP application to one is to operate a transmission facility in the ROS zone, and also has a variance request, which is one to construct 2 broadcast towers at 140 and 160 feet in height, and also to construct an unstaffed communications building. It was previously noticed at 15 feet, but however, the applicant has modified their drawings or their proposal to lower it to 12 feet. So it's no longer a request for a variance to exceed the height of 12 feet for a flat roof. This project had a draft negative declaration, which was circulated for a 20-day appeal period. No comments from the general public was received. I'm going to break into just generally about the project site. As you can see, the outline of this property, it's about approximately 23-acre site. It's fairly large. It's generally known as Flint Peak. It's located at the terminus gate of East Glen Oaks Road. And from the zoning map, you can see here it's zoned ROS and surrounded by SR and zone properties and ROS properties to the north that are directly abutting. On the property, it does have a primary ridge line, which is mostly on the eastern and southern portions of the property, which goes across where they're going to be doing the work. And just to give a quick background of the property, a transmission facility has been operating on the site since the 50s. At present, there are 6 structures there, which are towers and monopoles, and 3 unstaffed communication buildings. The existing structures up there range from 50 feet and 160 feet. The proposed construction will occur in 2 phases. The first phase will be to construct the 2 towers and the accessory structure, the unmanned accessory building. And phase 2 would be to demolish the 3 existing monopoles or H-frame structure and relocate the existing equipment on those to be demolished structures onto the 2 new towers. Just to quickly go over the analysis of the project for the variance, there are practical difficulties on the site. Antennas, by nature, for its service, need to be located at sufficient elevation for a clear line of sight to avoid man-made structures or other natural features. Given this is located in the Glen Oaks Canyon and surrounding the property are the San Rafaels, further west would be the Verdugos, and of course north of generally all of Glendale is the San Gabriels. Limiting the new structures to a maximum height of 15 feet would reduce the range and line of sight for a tower or any transmission facility to be effective to reach its users or consumers of broadcasting. The subject is unique compared to other same zones. This is once again an ROS zone. It's because it's just the development history. It's been used as a transmission facility for the past 60 years, since the 1950s. There would be no detrimental impact because even though there is a primary ridgeline, and once again, I'm going to drill in here. This is an existing transmission facility site. The applicant proposes to cluster the development of the 2 new towers, generally where all the other towers are located right now. So they're going to be clustering on the site, and they're going to be condensing and consolidating the total amount of equipment on the site. So overall, the amount of towers or structures would be a decrease of 1. The nearest residences to this property, it's approximately 2,000 feet to the northeast of where the actual work is occurring. And this right here, you can see from here, the single-family neighborhood, approximately 2,200 feet to the northeast. There are adequate utilities, traffic circulation, landscaping on the property. And once again, it's an existing site. So there is existing utilities going to the site to operate this. The site is accessed by it's called a radiolateral fire road, which is accessed from Glen Oaks Boulevard past a gated terminus. And because of the daily traffic would be essentially nothing because it's going to be an unmanned facility. Staff does recognize construction would result into a temporary increase of traffic for construction purposes. However, it will be approximately a 10-week period, so it's going to be intermittent. Overall landscaping, the site is an open space site. It's about 23 acres. It's mostly of natural vegetation. Wherever the grading is going to be occurring and the construction, it's at a flat pad that's been previously graded, and the area here has minimal landscaping already. It's already disturbed. So overall, staff supports the proposed variance, conditional use permit, and the draft ND. If you have any questions for me, I'd be more than happy to answer the questions.
Yeah, I just want to clarify. So the new towers are going in exactly the area where there's already been development. They're not moving any closer to the residential homes, correct?
That's correct.
Okay, and then also we're reducing one of the towers.
That's correct.
And the purpose of these improvements are to serve the homes in the surrounding area in Glendale, correct?
For Glendale, even the general LA area.
Okay.
Correct, yes.
All right. Thanks. And I have two speakers. I have Kristen Davis and Travis Jokerst. I'm not sure who would want to speak first. Oh, there's another person too. Okay, if you'll submit that as well. So I'll call up whoever's here to represent the project, because I have two people that are listed as project manager. Thanks. Yeah.
I'm Travis Jokerst with EnviroMine, here representing the applicant.
Okay.
And we are in favor, obviously, of the application. And I will defer to Kristen Davis, who has a little more familiarity with the project, to just give a couple little extra notes.
Okay.
So I'm Kristen Davis with EnviroMine. We're here on behalf of the applicant, American Towers Corporation, and we are in favor of approval of the CUP and variance project. Myself and American Towers have reviewed the staff report and conditions, and they are prepared to comply with all conditions for the project. So,
And I guess I just have an overall question of why are you replacing towers?
it's kind of an equipment upgrade to increase surface for other antennas. So that's broadcast, meaning television and radio up there. And specifically, there are also emergency services that are broadcast from that property. So just increase equipment and visibility and distance.
Visibility being the line of sight?
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Will these improvements improve service to Glendale residents in the canyons?
I believe so, yeah.
Okay. And how are they maintained? How will these be maintained? I mean, I know we have existing. Is it the same crew? Is it additional crews? Is it the same type of procedures that they're doing now, or would we see an expansion?
It's the same type of procedures. I think maybe, weekly or monthly, there's a couple guys that come up and make sure everything's all right and everything's working properly. So, yeah.
Okay. That's my only questions. And you do agree with all the findings that were included in the staff report?
Yes, we do.
Okay. Thank you. I'm first to ask, is there anybody else in the audience? I see several other people in the audience. Is there anybody else who wishes to speak on 3600? Because I only have one more card. So if anybody else wishes to speak, please provide a card. I'd like to call Mr. Mike Tosh.
Good morning.
Morning.
Good morning, everybody. Mike Tosh. I live in Burbank, California, and I'm an employee of Spanish Broadcasting Systems, corporate offices in Miami. We are a tenant at the existing site, and we're a tenant under American Tower Corporation, which is the applicant here. We're in support of the project. I only come with several comments. We would like to request that there be very good communication for this construction, because Spanish Broadcasting operates KLAX FM radio, which is Spanish music, from the site 24/7. And as we know, and I'm a broadcast engineer of 40 years experience, when you do construction of towers where there are existing radio frequency emissions, you have to be concerned about worker safety in building those towers. We emit a signal that can cause issues to the workers if it's not reduced. And this is done all the time across the country and probably around the world, more specifically here in Los Angeles on Mount Wilson. There's a lot of condensed construction, condensed operations there, and whenever there is any type of construction, there was always communication to all the users at Mount Wilson that this is going to occur, and everybody cooperates. Everybody knows this is all for the good of what broadcasting does to the community and serving the public. So we do cooperate, but we need to make sure at this project that there is communication to the users of the site, and specifically to our company, so that we know when they need us to reduce power, and also to work together with us, because there are certain times that we don't want to reduce power. Morning drive and afternoon drive are very sensitive to a radio station's success in the market as everybody's driving. And normally, following the model on Mount Wilson, usually we don't power down until 10 o'clock in the morning and power back up at 3 o'clock. So it's actually a very narrow window that is used today at Mount Wilson. And I would like to see if we could follow that type of model on Flint Peak. I'm not aware of other users at the site that would have this scenario. We're full-time there. I don't know who else is full-time there that would have a problem, or where the workers would have a problem with the signals that are there. We transmit 33,000 watts of power from Flint Peak, which is what this is called generally. So that's our concern, is that we will have to power down during work constructing the towers, and that there be communication to us tenants that this is needed and when. And those are my comments.
All right, thank you.
Okay.
Then I'd like to call back Kristen Davis or Travis. I'm not sure who is responsible for this, but would you please address the comments raised about communication with tenants?
I think American Towers, they have a construction crew coming together, making plans for the project, and that will definitely be a part of their construction plans, is communicating with the tenants and figuring out the best times for the construction, and just working together, because I do see it, it is a sensitive spot up there, and including the safety of the emissions and whatnot. So yeah, American Towers, I think, will be prepared to work with everyone and come up with a good construction plan and schedule. So.
Okay. Thank you. Is there anybody else who wishes to speak on this item? Okay, seeing none, I'm going to close the hearing and take this item under submission. All right, and then we have the last item. I don't know if everybody's here yet for the last item.
They are, but I would request a break.
I'm going to take a short recess. Okay, we're back from recess. Our last item is located at 1304 to 1310 South Brown Boulevard Street and also 110 to 116 East Cypress Street. This is a notice of intent to adopt a negative declaration and a parking reduction permit, case number PPRP 1829835. The applicant is William James and the owner is Universal Auto Group. And our staff person is Roger Kiesel. I'd like to ask Roger to present an overview presentation.
All right, good morning, Ms. Stotler. The applicant is proposing to demolish the existing two-story, approximately 12,000 square foot automobile dealership building and construct a new approximately 107,000 square foot, five-story Subaru automobile dealership building on an approximately 36,000 square foot site. Behind you is the site plan of the site, as well as certain floor plans and then the elevations of the proposed dealership. The first level of the building will include the dealership showroom, sales offices, service writers' offices, parts storage, and vehicle service bays. The second level will include offices and some parts storage. The third level of the proposed building will include vehicle service bays, and the fourth and fifth levels will contain the customer, employee, and inventory parking. The proposed dealership building will require 428 on-site parking spaces. The applicant is proposing to provide a total of 130 parking spaces, which includes 82 accessible spaces and 48 tandem spaces. So the applicant is requesting a parking reduction for 346 spaces. The existing Subaru dealership is located on two lots at 1304 South Brand Boulevard, which is the subject lot, and also a 1322 South Brand, which is just south. The new building will be built entirely on the lot located at 1304 South Brand. No changes to the building or the site at 1322 South Brand Boulevard are proposed. Staff believes that the findings in support of the parking reduction can be made and recommends the planning hearing officer approve the request. The city's zoning code requires vehicle sales, leasing, and rental agencies provide 4 parking spaces per 1,000 square feet of floor area. As I mentioned before, the dealership building will be approximately 107,000 square feet of floor area, which translates into 428 on-site parking spaces required. Staff, however, believes that the parking standards in the zoning code for automobile dealerships really exceed what is needed for this land use. The 4 parking spaces per 1,000 square feet of floor area is the same parking standard as all typical general retail uses are required to provide, so supermarkets or, pretty much any retail. While automobile dealerships are a retail use, they are unlike most general retail uses in a couple of ways. The product that dealerships sell, cars, are large and take up a significant amount of space to store and display. And also, customers typically do not shop for their product, the cars, on a regular basis. Additionally, because land costs and availability, automobile dealerships in Glendale, or their configuration of automobile dealerships in Glendale is changing. Automobile dealers in urban areas like Glendale are moving away from the more typical suburban dealership model, where the dealership building is in the center of the site and that building is surrounded by surface parking, which contains the customer, employee, and inventory parking. They're moving away from that to more of an urban model, where all the parking is contained within really a multi-story building. So, like in this case, there's one building with showroom, office, service, as well as parking all in one building. And when, for instance, when parking is covered, such as in this case, it's considered floor area, and our zoning code requires us to park it. So in the present case, the fourth floor of the proposed dealership, which is the floor plan, is posted on the board behind you. It's a floor entirely containing parking. So of the 428 parking spaces required for the project, it's actually that, it's that right there. So of the 428 parking spaces required for the project, 128 of those spaces are generated by that floor, which is just under 32,000 square feet. So had the parking been provided in a surface lot for this dealership, no parking spaces would have been required. However, the fourth floor, since it's covered, it's considered floor area, and we are required to park it. So the parking contained on this level of the project really doesn't in and of itself generate the need for additional parking. Similar to the fourth floor, the third floor of the project also contains really a large discrepancy between the amount of parking required versus what is really and what it would really anticipate to be generated. So the third floor, which is above, it's the top. The third floor contains the same amount of floor area, just under 32,000 square feet of floor area, and includes 26 vehicle storage lifts or service bays, as well as some parts storage and a parts manager's office, as well as some space devoted to break and lunchroom for the service technicians that work on that floor. So according to the applicant, each of the service technicians is responsible for 2 bays. So at most, if all the bays are filled with service cars, 13 technicians would be expected to be working on them, and then a maximum of really 13 parking spaces would be needed for those technicians. In addition to that, with the offices and other space proposed on that site, staff thought that the third floor uses would reasonably generate a need for 15 parking spaces as opposed to the 128 that the zoning code would require. Those 2 floors really have the most discrepancy between what the zoning code requires and what we would reasonably expect. But the staff report does go into the first, second, and fifth floors in what staff would anticipate a reasonable amount of parking for those floors would be, and that's in the staff report. I'm not going to go over it now. But in summary, we would anticipate 45 parking spaces needed for the first floor, which again includes showroom, offices, etc. Second floor, 15 spaces, which includes some office, conference room, and part storage. The third floor at 15, which I went over. The fourth floor, nothing, again, because it's parking, and parking in of itself doesn't generate a parking need. And then the fifth floor, which is uncovered, it does, however, include some car wash areas, and our code requires a minimum of 10 spaces for a car wash, and that's what we anticipated. We don't think that in this case it would require a need for 10, but we use that as a worst case scenario. So adding all those numbers up, a more reasonable generation of parking space need instead of the 428 would be 85 parking spaces. So that's what we think the dealership would need in terms of employee and customer parking. So the intent of the parking regulations in general is to provide suitable off-street parking facilities and protect the public safety by lessening traffic congestion on adjacent public streets. As I analyzed and documented in the staff report, the actual parking need for the proposed dealership would be 85 parking spaces. The project will include 130 parking spaces, 82 accessible, as well as 48 non-accessible. While the 130 total parking spaces proposed exceeds the demonstrated generation of parking spaces for the project, as I just noted, several of these spaces are not going to be accessible as they're in a tandem configuration. So staff is suggesting some conditions added to the project to ensure that the intent of the parking regulations is being met. These conditions include marking designated customer employee parking spaces, requiring all employees to park on site, and then providing a valet service or some other assistance for customers as well as employees of the dealership, such that all spaces are easily accessible and usable. So with those three spaces, or with those three conditions, we think the intent of the parking regulations will be met. In addition, traffic circulation will continue to meet city standards. There really aren't any changes to the existing driveways on the site, nor on the adjacent street network. Parking reduction permit applications are really tied to the use under which they're requested. These applications don't run with the land as some of our other applications do. So should the proposed dealership cease operation and a new use is subsequently proposed for the site, the applicant for the new use would either need to provide the current code required parking for the proposed use, or apply for another parking reduction permit and receive approval for that request. Concluding my presentation, again, staff is recommending approval of the parking reduction permit with conditions. Staff is requesting one condition be added to the approval that wasn't included in the initial staff report or findings.
Okay.
Recently, staff received complaints regarding on-site lighting at the dealership, and staff is suggesting that the applicant submit a lighting study to verify that existing and new lighting at the dealership. So that includes both the 1304 and 1322 addresses. So existing and proposed lighting is in compliance with the zoning standards. And we would suggest that a condition requiring that be included in approval of the project if you are so inclined to approve the project. So that concludes my presentation, and I'd be happy to answer any questions.
I do have a couple of questions, and so if you're not able to answer, perhaps the applicant would be able to do it. I'm concerned that if we're going to have parking reductions, and we're going to have valet parking, where is that going to be located? Because I do not want to have stacking going out into the street. That concerns me. And then, are we going to have it? I realize that there's two addresses. This parking reduction, I just want to clarify, is just for this one address. It does not address the 1322 site at all, even though the dealership has these two properties. Is that correct?
Right, it's one dealership, but this is for the 1304 site.
Okay, and so how is the valet parking going to work, and where is it going to be located? And
That's probably best answered by
the
the
applicant? Okay. I have two cards, and I'm not sure who could answer the question. I guess it's Bill James, followed by Tony Dominguez.
Hi, Bill James, 415 West Ninth Street, San Pedro. I'm the project architect. First off, let me give a really brief background. So this is a really successful car dealership and a kind of a rundown old building. So there's pressure from corporate. They're like the #1 dealership in California. Some months they've been the #1 dealership in the country. So this is a challenging urban site where the corporation wants to get all the components of for the planning potential. So that's why it's big, and that's why there's no surface parking. So in answer to your question, can I walk up there?
Absolutely. And I can move this out if it...
So this is where the current, so this is Brand, and there is some street parking here. There's what, maybe about 15 spaces, more or less, that's constantly used for the dealership. I know that doesn't count, but it is a component to this. So the existing service drive comes in this way. We're making it wider. So the service drive and queue total goes from here to here, which is probably 175 feet worth of, queue for the cars. So I would, again, it probably would vary depending on how much traffic, but they would pick up, there's a door for the showroom here, there's a door for the showroom here. The valet would probably be picked up somewhere along here depending on how much traffic there was, or it could be picked up here to take the car off, come around this way, go up the ramp, and then people can go into the showroom.
Okay. So I know we have a lot of cars parked up on the higher levels. The public is not going to be driving up there. Everything's going to be the valet that would go into the higher levels.
That's the intent.
Okay.
I think it's confusing enough to drive around the building that it's better to have this porters take the cars.
Yeah, I'm more concerned with just, I know that a lot of times when service happens, everybody arrives at once and you tend to get a really big crowd in the morning. I just don't want to have stacking that would interfere with Brand Boulevard. That's my concern. So
there's 2 lanes. I mean, it'll probably take them a little bit of time to use this new facility to work it out, but there's also entrances on Cypress, so there's a possibility to divert people around for overflow. But I understand the concern.
Can I speak to that briefly?
Sure. Yeah, sure. If you want to, please state your name.
Tony Dominguez.
Okay.
Actually, what we'll do is improve or reduce any stacking on Brand Boulevard because we've essentially doubled our service drive capacity. So we expect to reduce or eliminate that.
Okay.
And the valet will be a critical part of that. So we'll have more space, we'll have more valet, so we expect to reduce that.
And is the valet free?
Yes.
Okay.
I'm not sure how familiar you are with dealership operations. First of all, in sales, I don't know if last time you bought a car, used to be customers would come and sit for hours to buy a car, but nowadays most of the negotiation is done, the car is picked out, it's just about sitting in it, riding it, sign the papers and go. So it's a much quicker process than it used to be. And for service, for new car dealers, the trend is for quick service where we can, I'm sure you've seen these quick loops centers on the corners that we compete with them. They can turn cars out in 10, 15 minutes. So we need to compete with that. So we get them in, we get the car serviced, we get it out. There's not a lot of waiting, so therefore not a lot of parking.
Okay. No, it sounds like you have the same concerns we do. Is we don't want to see stacking on our streets.
Oh, absolutely.
So,
Absolutely.
yeah. Okay. I just wanted to make sure you had the capacity there, and it appears that you do.
Thank you.
All right. Thank you. And then, Mr. James, if you wanted to finish any other presentation, I know we kind of got sidetracked there.
No, that's okay. Just, we're fine with the conditions, including the lighting. We have a DRB hearing coming up. I'm sure they would throw that in to that also. So,
Probably, yes.
Probably, yeah.
so that's pretty typical for these kinds of things. So everything else we're fine with, and they want to be good neighbors. They want to sell cars.
Okay, all right.
Thank you.
Thank you. And then, Mr. Dominguez, is there anything else you wanted to add?
Yeah, just briefly, we've been so successful. We've been here since 2009, and the brand has really taken off. As Bill mentioned, we are #1 in California, and for 3 months out of last year, we were #1 in the nation. So what that means to the city of Glendale is tax revenue. The dealers on brand generate a significant amount of tax revenue for the city. You guys used to put out a list, and our dealer group was always 4th or 5th on the list of tax generators for the city. So, and as Bill mentioned, we do want to be a good neighbor, and we're incorporating as much as we can to lessen any kind of impact on the rest of the neighborhood. And we need this building to continue to success. And as Roger said, he spoke about vertical versus land parking. I mean, we're kind of getting double counted. Square footage is getting kind of double counted, even though it is dedicated parking. So, you know, it's a conundrum, but Roger spoke to that. And as Bill mentioned, we agree with all the conditions, and Roger just spoke to me about the additional conditioning about lighting. We just installed brand new LED lighting about 6 months ago. We did have a complaint at that time. Your person came out and found no basis for the complaint, but I guess there's another complaint, and we have no problem doing a photo study. It's probably just an issue of tilting the lights down. We can adjust them so that if it's up too high and it bothers somebody, we can easily adjust it.
Okay.
Okay.
Well, thank you. I see no other speakers, and I have no other questions. Therefore, I'm going to close the public hearing, and I will take this case under submission, and we'll be preparing a decision. And there are no further items on this agenda. Therefore, this meeting is now adjourned, and thank you for coming.